So I saw that Leticia James, she is now making a move. I want to do a 10,000 foot view of what's going on, but let me zoom in just quickly for a second. She has now hired the same lawyer as Hunter Biden while claiming that she's completely innocent of mortgage fraud, that she's completely innocent of raising the valuation of her property in order to get better loans, lying on applications about how many rental properties she has in order to secure better financing. And she says, I never said my primary residence was in Virginia. That's how I'm able to remain the Attorney General of New York. What are your thoughts on the Leticia James situation and her hiring Hunter Biden's lawyer?
Well, lawyers are lawyers, and if you want to hire somebody that you feel confident in, fine. What we need to watch out for this is she paying the lawyer's fee, or is she trying to bamboozle the citizens of New York again so they wind up paying it? They shouldn't, because this is personal to her and has absolutely nothing to do with official duties. Also, in my long experience dealing with the criminal law, I would say that, this old thing they used to have in the old time movies, the crook always returns to the scene of the crime. Well, I never really particularly found that to be true, but I did find that the people that were trying to implicate somebody else in crime tended to implicate people falsely for doing what they themselves were doing, because perhaps they understood it. So when I read what they were trying to do or are doing in investigating Leticia James, I said, oh, if you took the name away, you would think she was talking about President Trump and what she went after him for. So it's like, oh, that seems very familiar to me.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and most importantly, please make sure that you are following me on Telegram at TD Media Group to help circumvent social media censorship and shadow banning. Okay, and with the introduction out of the way, let's get into today's news. And I think you guys know by now, whenever I give my spiel and I say, with all that being said, let's get into today's news, and I have a grin on my face, you know where we're going with this. Back to New York to talk about who? Big Tish, aka the Queen of New York, the Teflon Donis, the woman who can do whatever she wants and without having to worry about being held up to the letter of the law, because apparently Leticia James is above the law. We got to get back into her right now because it looks like there might possibly be some funny money going on with campaign funds. I don't know. It's definitely worth looking into, especially when she has a history of waging lawfare on Republican politicians, filing frivolous lawsuits claiming that they themselves are misusing campaign funds when that's not the case. Right? Well, that's not the case at all. Many of you all remember Steve McLaughlin here. We've talked about him on a handful of occasions, but it is relevant to bring him up again. For those of you who don't know who Steve McLaughlin is, Steve McLaughlin is an American politician serving as county executive of Rensselaer County, New York. McLaughlin was elected Rensselaer County executive in November of 2017. What is his relationship to Leticia James? Well, on December 21st, McLaughlin was indicted on 2 felony counts, including grand larceny in the 3rd degree for misusing campaign funds to pay for personal debts. On January 25th of 2023, McLaughlin was acquitted of the felony counts by a jury after 1 hour of deliberations. And like I stated last time we discussed this, 1 hour of deliberation is lightning quick. If you go to court for anything and you're tried by a jury of your peers and they come back within an hour, either it is clear that you are innocent or very clear that you're guilty, because it typically takes more than a couple hours for the jury to come down with a decision, if not a couple of days, depending on the trial, the scope of the trial, and everything that's going on, right? But an hour, and they acquitted him. Clearly, the evidence showed that this was lawfare, and this man was not misusing his campaign funds to pay for personal debt. This was just lawfare being waged on him by, Big Tish. the Teflon Donnas, the Queen of New York. And I believe it's worth looking into her finances and what she's done with her campaign funds in the past, since she's someone who's very quick to want to sue you and put a lawsuit on you for what you're doing with your campaign funds. You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and you shouldn't throw rocks in a glass house, as people like to say. Especially when you might be guilty of the same thing. Now, we went through this already. I'm not going to read this article again. Many of you remember this. Letitia James spent $41,000 in taxpayer funds on private jet flights while campaigning. It seemed like it. If you remember this article here, when I made a video on it, it seemed like that's exactly what she did. And, you know, as y'all remember, based on the evidence or lack thereof, because as the article highlighted, we are going to need a Freedom of Information Act if we want to be able to really pry into how these tax dollars were spent. But seemingly, they were spent on Letitia James campaigning, which is illegal. But now, besides that, let's get into this here. Private jets and lobbyist dance parties, how Letitia James uses campaign funds to live the high life. This woman has very expensive taste, and we're going to get into that right now. And like I said, by the end of this, I don't know, man, I think there should be some sort of an investigation, deep dive into how this woman's using her money. All right. We got to find out and get to the bottom of whether or not she's misusing campaign funds, if you ask me. But with all that being said, man, let's dive into this article right now and unpack some of this. New York Attorney General Letitia James has used her campaign war chest to finance a life of luxury, a Washington Free Beacon review of state records reveals. Campaign finance records show that James has pulled over $310,000 from her campaign since her 2018 election to purchase stays at luxury hotels across the country and host political meetings at swanky New York City restaurants. But the largest chunk of James's extracurricular campaign spending has gone to finance her annual excursion to a Puerto Rican junket the New York Times calls a most unusual gathering of New York politicos. Now, what I want to do next, I want to jump into that New York Times article, actually. Let's dive into it right now. And that article that they're referencing is titled The Tropical Conclave, where politicians and lobbyists go to make deals on your campaign dollars, right? Let's jump into this article here. It was 11 p.m. on the Friday after Election Day, and two likely candidates to be New York City's next mayor, Corey Johnson, the council speaker, and Ruben Diaz Jr., the Bronx borough president, were deep in conversation under purple lit palms outside of a beachfront hotel. Inside, the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, danced atop a platform in a roped-off club at an exclusive party hosted by a New York City public employee union. Lobbyists for various clients swayed to the beat, mingling near the state assembly speaker and the Brooklyn's district attorney. It is perhaps the most unusual gathering in New York politics, held 1,600 miles away, the annual exodus of the state's political class to Puerto Rico. The vibe is something like a spring break pilgrimage for public officials and the lobbyists to woo them, where mojitos accompany talk of prevailing wages and the traditional talk to my staff culture melts away. The event is staged by a nonprofit known as Somos, whose stated purpose, according to tax filings, is to address problems of the Hispanic community through grants and scholarships. Stop, pause, time out on the court. Scholarships and grants are going to this nonprofit. We all know how this goes with nonprofits, right? Scholarships and grants are going to this nonprofits, essentially so that they can go down to Puerto Rico and have their own private club gathering that's roped off to the public and to get drunk and dance. That's what they're doing over there, right? No. But if you let them tell it, we're addressing the problems of the Hispanic community off of these grants and scholarships, right? And then you have people like Letitia James and God knows who. I'm sure. Well, based off the photo that we see here, Letitia James and Kathy Hochul, by the way, and Kathy Hochul, you know, they're using your campaign dollars because that's what they really are. For those of you who support these people, right? You donated to them and they're taking that money, tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars over years' time, and they're spending literally tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars to get drunk and party while pretending to be addressing the problems of the Hispanic community. Okay, this is what's going on with your campaign dollars that you donate to these people, for those of you who support them, right? And that's what's going on with grant money and scholarship money as well, right? Grant and scholarship money is going to this nonprofit, right, to essentially throw parties in Puerto Rico so politicians like Big Tish can get drunk. Let's carry on, right? That's enough ranting for a moment. Let's carry on. The relaxed atmosphere can begin on the way to the island. On one Thursday flight, more than a dozen top officials and a handful of lobbyists piled into the same plane, including Miss James, Big Tish, the state Senate leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins, and the New York City Comptroller, Scott M. Stringer, another likely mayoral candidate. Officials visited one another in their aisles or turned around their seats for conversation like children on a field trip. Man, they're having a good time off those campaign dollars, aren't they? Oh, I think an investigation should be had. That's just me, though. That's just me, though. I could be reaching. It's just me, but I think there should be an investigation. But let's get into this here. I want to go back to the original article that I was referencing as we round things out. Check this out. It's common practice among New York politicians to use campaign funds to pay their way to the annual junket, the outlet reported. And thanks to New York law that lets politicians use campaign funds to assist in the execution or performance of the duties of their office, James' campaign spending appears to be above board. Now, I guess they're saying essentially it's no harm, no foul after that New York law was passed. Sounds very vague, right? Let me read that again. And thanks to the New York law that lets politicians use campaign funds to assist in the execution or performance of duties of their office, James' campaign spending appears to be above the board. That's assist in the execution or performance of duties. So getting drunk in Puerto Rico assist in the execution or performance of the duties? All right. I mean, if in New York State they passed this as law, I guess it is what it is. Yeah, let's carry on. But James has repeatedly come under fire for her campaign spending. Uh-oh. In 2001, during her failed campaign for a seat on the New York City Council, James was assessed a $29,000 penalty for misusing public funds for her primary election. So she has a history of misusing funds. All right. She definitely has a history dating back to 2001. And in my opinion, where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's a lot of smoke surrounding, the things that she's been doing, especially when you're talking about this 41K in taxpayer funds spent on private jets. And that's a luxury private jet company too, by the way. But I digress. James appealed the fine in October of 2003, which the New York City Campaign Finance Board rejected. Translation, she was guilty, right? She misused that $29,000 on God knows what. God knows what. Other notable expenditures from James' campaign included a $12,000 payment to Venture Jets, a private jet service, a nearly $2,000 payment at a Brooklyn diner in November of 2020 to host a meeting with elected officials, $4,600 for house rentals in Martha's Vineyard in August 2021 and in 2022, $278 for a fundraising event at the Patrick Steakhouse in Brooklyn in October of 2021, and $3,300 at the Junior's Cheesecake restaurant across 5 visits from December 2019 to April of 2023. How in the world do you spend $3,300 at a cheesecake restaurant? Even if you've been there 5 times in between a 4-year period. You know how many times I've been to the Cheesecake Factory here in LA? I've never spent that kind of money. And I spend liberally when we go there. Me and my wife and my family, the rare times to go to the Cheesecake Factory, we don't go there often. When we go, we buy. We order what we want. And we've been there more than 5 times. And that total has never come anywhere close to $3,300. So, I mean, what in the world is going on? Man, Leticia James is really out here living the high life off of her campaign funds, living the life of luxury, private luxury jets, expensive dinners, private rental homes in Martha's Vineyard, spending $4,600 on this, $2,000 for a Brooklyn dinner in November of 2020. What I have here marked in purple is outrageous. You spent $2,000 on dinner, hosting a meeting with elected officials. I don't know, man. It just amazes me, coming back to Steve McLaughlin, how these people are seemingly always doing the thing that they're accusing essentially Republicans of doing. They always are. She'll wage lawfare on you, all the while she's doing that herself while putting you in court for it, a la Donald Trump. And then we have the situation here with Republican Steve McLaughlin. She sued him, or threw a lawsuit on him, I should say, for misusing campaign funds, which he was quickly acquitted of. Meanwhile, it's looking like Big Tish was doing the same exact thing, living the high life off of her campaign dollars. I don't know, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. This woman just seemingly is guilty of everything that she claims other people are doing. This seems to be the story of Big Tish. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. With all that being said, that does it for today's news. So please hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video on your social media platforms. And also, don't forget to follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegrams in the description box below and pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you all for your time. Until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.